Imagine this. It's late evening, the road is quiet, and flashing lights suddenly fill your rearview mirror. You pull over, heart beating just a little faster than normal. The officer approaches, calm but observant. A few minutes later, something changes. The tone shifts. The questions become sharper. And then, they ask you to step out of the car. In that moment, everything feels uncertain. But here's the real question. What actually happens if police find evidence in your car? And more importantly, do you truly understand your rights in that situation? Take a second and think about it. If this happened to you right now, would you know exactly what to do, or would panic take over? Let me know in the comments. Because most people think they know, but very few actually do. Now let's walk through this step by step, not as a theory, but as a real-world scenario grounded in law, procedure, and decades of legal precedent. When police stop a vehicle, it usually begins with something simple, maybe a traffic violation, a broken taillight, or even routine suspicion. At this stage, the interaction is considered a temporary detention, not an arrest. The officer has limited authority, but that authority is very real. Now here's where things start to shift. If an officer notices something unusual, maybe the smell of something illegal, visible items inside the car, nervous behavior, or inconsistent answers, that can legally escalate the situation. In law enforcement terms, this is often referred to as reasonable suspicion. And that's a critical concept. Reasonable suspicion allows officers to investigate further. It doesn't mean you're guilty. It doesn't even mean they have proof. But it does mean they have a legal basis to look deeper. Now imagine this. The officer shines a flashlight into your car and sees something on the seat. It might be small. It might seem harmless to you. But in the eyes of the law, it could be considered potential evidence. At that moment, the situation changes again. Because now we move into one of the most important legal areas in criminal procedure, the search of a vehicle. Under many legal systems, including U.S. law and similar frameworks worldwide, vehicles are treated differently than homes. There is something called the automobile exception, which allows police to search a car without a warrant under certain conditions. Why? Because cars are mobile. Evidence can disappear quickly. The law recognizes that waiting for a warrant could result in lost evidence. But here's the key detail. Police still need probable cause. Probable cause is stronger than reasonable suspicion. It means there are clear factual reasons to believe that evidence of a crime is present. So if police find evidence in your car, it almost always means they believe they had probable cause to search in the first place. Now pause for a moment and think about this. What counts as evidence? It's not always what people assume. Evidence can be anything that suggests a crime has been committed. It could be illegal substances, weapons, stolen property, or even items that connect you to another incident. Sometimes it's not the object itself, but the context in which it's found. For example, something completely legal on its own could become suspicious depending on the situation. This is where many people misunderstand the law. They think, if I didn't do anything wrong, I'm safe. But the legal system doesn't work on assumptions. It works on facts, interpretations, and procedures. And once evidence is discovered, the situation can escalate quickly. The officer may detain you further. They may ask more detailed questions. In some cases, they may place you under arrest. But here's something extremely important to understand. Finding evidence in your car does not automatically mean you are guilty. Let that sink in. There's a difference between suspicion, evidence, and proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The legal process still has multiple stages: investigation, charges, court proceedings, and defense. And this is where your rights become absolutely critical. At this point, you have the right to remain silent. And this is not just a phrase you hear in movies. It's one of the most powerful protections you have. Because anything you say can be used against you later. Now think about human nature. When people are nervous, they talk more. They try to explain. They try to justify. But sometimes those explanations create more problems than they solve. So ask yourself honestly, if you were in that situation, would you stay calm and quiet, or would you start talking? This is where many legal cases take a decisive turn, because evidence alone doesn't always tell the full story, but statements, especially inconsistent or emotional ones, can significantly impact how a case develops. Now let's go deeper. Once evidence is found, it must be handled properly. Law enforcement must follow strict procedures when collecting, documenting, and storing evidence. This is known as the chain of custody. Why does this matter? Because if the chain of custody is broken, the evidence can be challenged in court. That's right. Even if something was found in your car, it doesn't automatically mean it will be accepted as valid evidence in court. Every step must be documented. Every transfer must be recorded, and this is where legal defense becomes crucial. A skilled legal team will examine every detail: how the search was conducted, whether probable cause existed, whether your rights were respected, and whether the evidence was handled correctly. If any part of that process is flawed, it can change the outcome of the case. Now let's pause again and reflect. How many people actually know this? Most people think once evidence is found, the case is over. But in reality, that's just the beginning. Now consider another layer: ownership and knowledge. Just because something is found in your car doesn't always mean it belongs to you. This becomes especially relevant if multiple people have access to the vehicle. For example, if a friend borrowed your car, or if someone else placed something inside without your knowledge, the legal situation becomes more complex. The law often looks at possession in two ways: actual possession and constructive possession. Actual possession means the item is physically on you. Constructive possession means you have control over the area where the item is found. And this distinction can make a huge difference in court. So let me ask you this. If something illegal was found in your car but you didn't know it was there, how would you prove that? That's where evidence, context, and legal argument all come into play. Now let's talk about something people rarely consider: the psychological side of these encounters. When police find evidence, the atmosphere changes instantly. What was once a routine stop becomes serious. The officer's tone becomes more controlled, more deliberate. Your body language becomes more noticeable. And in that moment, every action you take matters. Your responses, your tone, even your silence, everything is being observed. But here's the reality: staying calm, respectful, and aware of your rights is often the most effective approach. Not because it guarantees a specific outcome, but because it prevents the situation from escalating unnecessarily. Now, there's another important factor: consent. Sometimes police may ask for permission to search your vehicle, and many people, out of nervousness or pressure, say yes. But legally, consent changes everything. If you give permission, you may be limiting your ability to challenge the search later. So think about this carefully. Would you know how to respond in that moment? Because once consent is given, it becomes much harder to argue that the search was unlawful. This is why understanding your rights before you need them is so important. Not after, not during, but before. Now let's move toward the legal aftermath. If evidence is found and charges are filed, the case enters the judicial system. At this stage, everything becomes structured: court appearances, legal motions, evidence review, and possibly a trial. And this is where the earlier moments, the stop, the search, the discovery, are analyzed in detail. Every decision made during that encounter can influence what happens next, which brings us back to the beginning. A simple traffic stop can evolve into a complex legal situation. Not because of one single factor, but because of a chain of events. And understanding that chain is the key to understanding your rights. So let me ask you one final question. After hearing all of this, do you feel more prepared, or do you realize there's more you didn't know? Because the truth is, most people don't think about these situations until they're already in them. And by then, every second matters. As we come to the end of this, remember something important. The law is not just about rules. It's about procedures, rights, and how those rights are applied in real moments. If police find evidence in your car, it doesn't automatically define the outcome, but it does begin a process, one that depends on facts, law, and how the situation unfolds. Stay informed, stay aware, and most importantly, understand your rights before you ever need them. And now I want to hear from you. What's your opinion on this? Do you think most people truly understand their rights during a police stop, or is this something that needs more awareness? Share your thoughts in the comments.